Hi everyone. Today we are going to discuss about Matthew Arnold, who was an English poet, cultural critic, essayist, and known for his poetry as well as his critical essays on society, culture, and literature. He is often considered as one of the most important figures in Victorian literature. Matthew Arnold was born on 24th December 1822, England. He was the son of Thomas Arnold, the famous headmaster of Rugby School. Arnold also attended Rugby School and later Balliol College, Oxford, where he won the Newdigate Prize for his poem Cromwell. Arnold's poetry often reflects a sense of melancholy and longing for the harmonious past, as reflected in his Dover Beach. He has also written several pastoral elegies like Scholar Gypsy and Thyrsis. His work is characterized by his classical style. He has got an affinity towards classical style, and which is inclusive of themes of nature, faith, and human experiences. When you come to his criticism, Arnold was one of the pioneers of cultural criticism. His work Culture and Anarchy, published in the year 1869, is one of the seminal work in which he critiques the materialism and lack of culture in Victorian society. In addition to his literary works, Arnold served as an inspector of school for many years. So Arnold's influence extends beyond his poetry and criticism. He is regarded as a precursor to modern literary criticism. So there lies the importance and significance of Matthew Arnold. We can discuss about his poetry. One of his best known poems is Dover Beach. It expresses a deep sense of melancholy and the loss of faith in the modern world. We can discuss about Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach in detail in the upcoming classes. For the time being, let's move on to his two important pastoral elegies. First one is The Scholar Gypsy. So, what is a pastoral elegy? A pastoral elegy is a type of poem that combines elements of pastoral poetry as well as elegiac tradition, elements of from elegiac tradition. It typically mourns the death of a person, and on the other hand, it will idealize the rural rustic life as well as nature. You can see the depiction of shepherds and their rustic life. And also, peaceful rural landscape will be there. The deceased will be sometimes depicted as a shepherd, regardless of their actual role in life. You can see a grand expression of grief or lamentation over the loss of the loved one in pastoral poetry. Towards the beginning of the poem, you can see invocation of muse asking for inspiration to mourn the deceased. You can see the price of the deceased in the pastoral elegies usually. And you can also see there will be the poem raise arguments against the cruelty of death as well as its impact in the living of the living, and also impact of nature can be seen. So despite the sorrow, the poem usually ends on with a note of consolation, usually in pastoral elegies. Famous examples of pastoral elegies are Lycidas by John Milton. So Lycidas is one of the most famous of pastoral elegies, mourning the death of Milton's friend Edward King. Adonis by P.B. Shelley mourns the death of his fellow poet John Keats, and it incorporates classical mythology and pastoral imagery. So here, Matthew Arnold has also composed two significant pastoral elegies. First one is Scholar Gypsy, the Scholar Gypsy. So the Scholar Gypsy was first published in 1853, and it is based on a story from Joseph Glanvill's book The Vanity of Dogmatizing, published in the year 1661. So the poem tells the tale of an Oxford scholar. The gypsy, the wandering youth here, is an Oxford scholar who abandons his academic life. So the Oxford scholar abandons his academic life only to join a group of gypsies and learn their ways. So you can see as this is a pastoral elegy, the poem begins with a pastoral scene invoking a shepherd and describing the beauty of the countryside near Oxford. So, which is a university mentioned here? The university mentioned in the Scholar Gypsy is the Oxford University, and he himself, the titular character himself, was an Oxford scholar who abandons his academic life in order to study the ways of gypsies. So Arnold used a scholar's story to explore the themes of escape, the search for deeper meaning, contrast between simplicity of rural life as well as the complexities of modern existence. You can see a combination of idealism as well as romanticism in this poem. And the poem is also rich with pastoral imagery. This scholar gypsy can be considered implicitly as a critique of the industrial age and its impact on human values and spirituality. So the scholar's journey is explores the theme of isolation as well as solitude. So let's look into the opening stanza of Scholar Gypsy. Go, for they call you shepherd from the hill. Go, shepherd, and untie the wattle cords. No longer leave thy wistful flock unfed, nor let thy bowling fellows drag their thoughts, nor the cropped herbage shoot another head. But when the fields are still, and the tired men and dogs all gone to rest, and only the white sheep are sometimes seen, crows and recrows the strips of the moon blanched green, come, shepherd, and again begin the quest. So here you can see the stanza opens with a call to the shepherd, and the setting is a pastoral scene, and words like wattle cords, flock, and herbage evoke tranquility. And you can see the stanza suggests a quest, a quest to dwell deep into the essence of life, indicated by the line, "Come, shepherd, and again begin the quest." So that's all about Scholar Gypsy. So I hope you get a brief idea about this Scholar Gypsy. Now, Thyrsis is another important pastoral elegy written by Mathew Arnold. Now, the Scholar Gypsy, however, cannot be traditionally classified as an elegy. Instead, it's more accurately described as a pastoral poem with the elements of a lyrical narrative. While it shares some features with elegies, such as reflective and melancholic tone, it is not primarily focused on mourning the death of an individual. So, it cannot be considered as an elegy as such, but rather it can be considered as his pastoral poem, because elegy typically centers on mourning and lamenting the death of a specific person. In Scholar Gypsy, however, focuses on the story of a scholar who lives academic life to join a group of gypsies seeking deeper knowledge and meaning. While elegies often deal with themes of loss, grief, and consolation, Scholar Gypsy explores the themes of escape from modern life, the search of meaning, and the contrast between rural tranquility and urban complexity. And while you look into the structure, you can see elegies usually follow a specific structure that includes an expression of grief and praise for the deceased and a final note of consolation. Here, Scholar Gypsy does not adhere to such structure. Instead, it unfolds a narrative with pastoral imagery and philosophical reflection. But what are some of the common elements of elegiac tradition as reflected in the Scholar Gypsy? That are the melancholic tone. The Scholar Gypsy and elegies share a melancholic and reflective tone, contemplating deeper existential themes. You can see pastoral elements common to pastoral elegies in Scholar Gypsy. That is, Scholar Gypsy uses pastoral images to create a serene and idealized rural setting. So, Scholar Gypsy contains some elements that might be found in elegy. It is primarily a pastoral poem that tells a story and explores philosophical themes rather than mourning a specific loss. So it is a pastoral poem of Sir Matthew Arnold. Now we can move on to Matthew Arnold's Thyrsis. Thyrsis is typically a pastoral elegy by Matthew Arnold. It is written to commemorate his close friend and fellow poet, Sir Arthur Hugh Clough, who died in 1861. The poem was first published in 1866 and is considered as one of Arnold's finest works. The poem is set in the rural area near Oxford, a place that holds nostalgic significance for Arnold. And he employs classical pastoral tradition, referring to Arthur Clough as Thyrsis, a name borrowed from Greek and Latin pastoral poetry. Arnold reflects on his friendship with his friend Arthur Hugh Clough and the loss he feels. So you can see a sense of longing in this poem, and the ideals they shared during their youth is also there. You can also see the quest for ideals. Despite sorrow, Arnold finds hope in the enduring nature of the ideals that inspired him and Clough. He suggests that these ideals can still be found amidst the chaos of modern life if one listens to their inner voice. So the poem is rich with pastoral imagery, depicting the serene beauty of the countryside. Arnold uses this setting to contrast the simplicity and purity of rural life with the complexities of urban existence. And finally, as in any elegy, you can see the mourning. It encompasses the mourning of the loss of his friend, friend, and Arnold also expresses a sense of consolation towards the end. He believes that youthful ideals they cherish have not entirely vanished and can still guide him in his life. So Thyrsis is a reflection on friendship, loss, and the enquiring quest for meaning in a changing world. Now we can move on to the prose and criticism of Matthew Arnold. Cultural and literary criticism. So one of his famous work is Culture and Anarchy, which is a series of essays by Matthew Arnold. It was first published in the year 1869. It's a significant work of social and cultural criticism. It explores the role of culture in society, and also it critiques the attitudes prevailing in Victorian England. So Arnold defines culture as a pursuit of human perfection through the study and appreciation of best that has been thought and said in the world. See his quote. He emphasized the importance of sweetness and light, which represent beauty as well as intelligence. Sweetness represents beauty, light represents intelligence. So Arnold also critiques the materialism and lack of cultural depth in Victorian society. He divides English society into three classes: the barbarians, the Philistines, as well as the populace. So barbarians are the aristocracy. The Philistines represents the middle class, and the populace represents working class. So each group, according to Arnold, has its own shortcomings with respect to culture. In his Culture and Anarchy, published in 1869, he also contrasts Hebraism and Hellenism. So Hebraism, which emphasizes strictness of moral conduct on one hand. On the other hand, you can see Hellenism, which values the intellectual freedom as well as spontaneity of thoughts and all. So he argues that there should be a balance between Hebraism and Hellenism, which are essentially two important approaches that is needed for the comprehensive development of a culture. Arnold also says that state has its own role in promoting culture as well as education. He believes that state should always elevate its standards with respect to its moral and intellectual criteria, rather than merely focusing on its economic growth as well as political concern. You can see the term anarchy, which is in the title, which is a contrast to the term culture itself. So anarchy refers to the socio-political chaos that Arnold perceives as a result of lack of culture. So that's all about Culture and Anarchy of Matthew Arnold. Now, another important work is Essays in Criticism, which is a collection of essays where Arnold outlines his ideas on literary criticism, advocating for disinterestedness and objectivity in critical evaluation. So, his Essays in Criticism is a collection of critical essays, and the collection is divided into two series. The first series was published in 1865 and second series in 1888. In his Essays in Criticism, Arnold's outlines or his view on the role of criticism. He says that criticism should be disinterested endeavor. That means disinterestedness is his one of his term. Disinterestedness stands for free from any kind of judgments or personal biases. Arnold discusses about the importance of poetry as well as its role in society on one hand, and he also devises touchstone method, and he says that poetry should be judged by its ability to provide high standard of truth and beauty. In this essay, Arnold also critiques various translations of Homer's work, and offers his own principles for translating classical texts. He here stresses on the importance of fidelity to the original text spirit as well as style. Now, Arnold also explores differences between pagan and medieval religious sentiments. In this essay, in his Essays in Criticism, Matthew Arnold put forward a critical appreciation of German poet Heinrich Heine. Arnold praises Heine's wit as well as insight. So Arnold's essays often offers a cultural as well as intellectual criticism of his time. So he put forwards and balanced approach to culture that values both intellectual aspect as well as aesthetic beauty. So Matthew Arnold made his significant contributions to literary criticism, particularly through his essays and ideas that have shaped the field even to this day. So there are some of his key contributions. So now we can discuss about some of the key terms put forward by Matthew Arnold. We have seen the concept of disinterestedness, which stands for an objective criticism, aiming to appreciate literature for its intrinsic value as well as truth. That means critics should approach literature without any personal bias, prejudices, or ulterior motives. Now, his touchstone method is important, the touchstone method. So Arnold introduced the touchstone method in his essay, The Study of Poetry, published in 1880. So what do you mean by the touchstone method? Arnold suggests that if you want to judge the merit of a poem, one should compare it to the passages from the works of classical masters or acknowledged masters like Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton. So, if you want to analyze the merit of a piece of art or a poem, merit of a poem, you should compare it with the passages from the works of classical masters like Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton. So that is what is called touchstone method. You are comparing your poetry with the classical masters. So the chosen touchstones should exemplify high seriousness and as well as artistic excellence. So Arnold believed that true poetry should elevate the mind and spirit, and these qualities are what critics should look for in other works. He also looked for an objective evaluation. By using these touchstones, critics can make more objective evaluations of poetry, avoiding personal biases as well as subjective preferences. On the other hand, he warns against historical estimate. That means judging a work based on its historical significance as well as personal estimates. That means judging a work of art based on personal preferences. Instead, he advocates for the touchstone method, which is more reliable means of assessing its poetic value. So this touchstone method or comparison with classical masters remains its own influence in literary criticism, emphasizing the importance of timeless standards and the enduring of the great value in literature. So next is high seriousness. Arnold believed that great literature possesses a quality of high seriousness, meaning it deals with profound universal themes that reflects moral and intellectual concerns of humanity. Next is his term culture. So in Arnold's view, culture is the best that has been taught and said in the world. The phrase, the best that has been taught and said, originates from Mathew Arnold's book Culture and Anarchy, published in the year 1869, as we have seen earlier. So Arnold uses this term to describe the essence of culture, which he defines as a pursuit of human perfection through the study and appreciation of highest achievements in literature, art, and thought. So here is a relevant quote from Culture and Anarchy. Culture is then properly described not as having its origin in curiosity, but as having its origin in the love of perfection. It is a study of perfection. It moves by force, not merely or primarily on the scientific passion for pure knowledge, but also of the moral and social passion for doing good. As in the first place, it seeks to do away with the classes, to make the best that has been taught and known in the world current everywhere, to make all men live in an atmosphere of sweetness and light, where they may use ideas as it uses them itself, freely nourished and not bound by them. That means Arnold's vision on culture was to elevate society by fostering an environment of intellectual as well as moral improvement. So next is Hellenism versus Hebraism that we have discussed. In Culture and Anarchy, Arnold contrasts Hellenism and Hebraism. So Hellenism represents intellectual freedom, freedom of thought and aesthetic appreciation. On the other hand, Hebraism emphasizes moral strictness. So in Culture and Anarchy, Mathew Arnold thinks that a culture should be inclusive of both these two aspects, Hellenism as well as Hebraism. This dichotomy is used by Arnold to explore the balance needed in the society between intellectual as well as moral development. So you can see now, culture is a vast term and Hellenism is needed. Hellenism means intellectual freedom of thought as well as spontaneity of consciousness. On the other hand, Hebraism stands for moral strictness. There should not be a conflict between these two, but what is needed is a fine balance in order to nourish the culture, thinks Mathew Arnold. Next important phrase is sweetness and light. So sweetness and light is a concept introduced by Mathew Arnold in his book Culture and Anarchy, published in the year 1869. Arnold borrowed the phrase from Jonathan Swift's The Battle of Books, published in the year 1704, where it originally described the qualities of a bee's production of honey. Honey means sweet, represents sweetness. On the other hand, it also produces wax, which stands for light. Arnold's interpretation is sweetness represents beauty, aesthetic pleasure, and the pursuit of artistic and intellectual excellence. So on the other hand, light symbolizes intelligence, reason, and pursuit of knowledge. For Arnold, culture also involves the development of intellectual capabilities and the dissemination of knowledge. So Arnold argued that a true culture must embody both sweetness and light. So he saw these qualities as essential for achieving human perfection and the progress of the society. So according to Arnold, culture should not only provide intellectual and moral improvement, but also enrich the sweetness or enrich people's lives with beauty as well as joy. So in Culture and Anarchy, Arnold critiques the materialism and lack of cultural depth in Victorian society, and he thinks that both sweetness as well as light is needed to enrich a culture. Next important term is Philistinism. We have seen that term. So Philistinism, Philistine, who are Philistines? Philistines represents middle class people in the Victorian society, middle classes of Victorian society. So Arnold uses this term to describe the narrow-mindedness as well as the materialistic attitude as well as the indifference, and or this kind of attitude which is hostile to culture, art as well as intellectual pursuits. So Arnold criticized the Philistine mentality as a major obstacle to culture and intellectual development. Particularly, this Philistine mentality can be traced among the middle class of the Victorian society, says Arnold. So he thinks this attitude as a major obstacle to cultural as well as intellectual development. So these are all about Matthew Arnold's important terms. So hope these classes are useful for you. So thank you. Have a nice day.